afternoon and welcome to our first meeting of November. We have one presentation in particular before the body of our minutes, and I'll call this to order. The invocation tonight will be given by Councilman Kyle Newton. Respects to the flags will be led by Councilman Luis Martinez. Please rise.
Let us pray. Father, thank you for those who are gathered here tonight. Please guide our discussions this evening and let our efforts here go towards the betterment of the community that we all serve. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Occasionally when we have a chance, we always like to recognize organizations that are doing a good job in our community. And traditionally we have had, especially sports teams that do well and win championships, to come before council. Typically, during my lifetime here on council, they've all been little kids. But tonight we have some adults who have done some great things in regards to football. And I have a few, just some points to make. But these guys are the Palmetto Coats Arena football team. And it's a community-based organization that, number one, has a vision of bringing people together and providing fun and activities for our citizens in the greater Anderson County area. And I think in particular, these guys, probably like a lot of organizations that started off, didn't see COVID coming. And so they had to kind of develop and pause their plans for, I understand, a home football season. And the head coach will talk a little bit more about that. And they played some games on the road. But this past year, they actually played here in Anderson County. And spring of 22, the Cubs brought home the Federated Arena League Football Championship trophy to Anderson. They won a championship. So I think that deserves a round of applause. And so I'm going to ask their head coach, Dennis Hope, to come up with me and just to talk a little bit about his season and what the team means to him. He actually has, it's not his first coaching gig, and he'll talk about that. He's helped youth football teams and Tony Stewart. Did you ever compete against Tony?
I haven't.
Okay, so
we battled a bunch.
but but they do believe in helping the community, and he'll talk about how his team and his players have reached out to community and help other nonprofit organizations. But I'll turn it over to you, Coach.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, we are I like to say, faith-based organization that truly believes in the man upstairs. I've basically like to say that I give the players an opportunity to continue to pursue their dreams of playing football, even though some may have went to college, decided that that wasn't their route, but still wanted to play. So we just continue to go and build that route for our players and for the members of our staff that helps us out. But we do like to do a lot of different things in the community as far as like give backs for Christmas, turkey handouts at Thanksgiving, and just the overall letting these guys be positive members in the community for youth teams and kids to be able to look up to.
Tell us a little bit about the league, the teams that play in the league.
Well, we're a new league that formed last year, and we had a team in Georgia and then our team here in South Carolina. But we played a lot of different teams from Charlotte, Alabama, a few teams in Georgia. So we kind of travel a little bit. We try to keep it to a 2-3 hour minimum. just because the games usually start 7:30 in the evening and then trying to turn around and drive back home. We want to make sure that some of these guys live Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Columbia, but the bulk of our players, even though the majority of them are not here tonight, are from the Anderson County and Greenville area.
Can you introduce us to some,
So
maybe y'all can stand up?
I have my assistant head coach and defensive coordinator, Marcus Kemp, my starting running back, Bobby Kennebrew, my captain and starting center, Daquan Kendricks, Westside graduate, and Carson, who is a rookie. This was his first year actually playing arena, and we probably wouldn't have won it without it.
Thank you.
And this is my wife Dion, who's the do everything for us, logistics, and that's Faye Wynn, our public relations.
Good. Well, again, thank you for
Thank you for having us.
being involved in young men's lives, and we definitely appreciate you.
Show us the trophy.
Show us the trophy, yes.
Wow.
Coach, shake these guys. Yes, we do.
Yes, sir. Where your players come on through, coach?
Come on, please. Y'all come on,
You gonna
please.
showcase that?
Those are good men. Congratulations. Yeah, good men. Congratulations. What position?
Thank you. Congratulations to you. So when does the season start next year? July.
We run May through July.
And it's indoors, and I think we've got some gifts for you guys out here too. So when y'all go, y'all grab your gifts, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
For having us in tonight. So we hope that you will enjoy it.
Thank
And
you.
looking forward to, partnering with you guys in some activities throughout the year.
For sure. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. So the minutes of our October 24th meeting were distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve? I have a first by Mr. Newton, a second by Dr. Thompson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes of October 24th passed unanimously. We have one item of old business, and that item is request consideration of an ordinance to rezone approximately 28 acres located off of Crowder Road on US 29 bypass from HI Heavy Industrial to a PDD, a Planned Development District. Mr. McEwen?
Thank you. Mr. Maurice McKenzie, our Planning Development Director, will cover this item for you.
Thank you. In your packet, you have a location map, also a draft PDD document pertaining to this property. You do have familiarity with this project because it's an item that's been under discussion for several months. But just to bring you up to speed on where we are, the applicant's proposing to rezone the property, as the mayor mentioned, from HI Heavy Industrial to PDD Planned Development District in order to develop Rocky River Retreat, which will be considered an agritourism type community. The development will consist of a farm-to-table restaurant, a brewery, possibly some retail space, gathering space for educational, tourism, event activities. There will be farming taking place on the property to help grow and raise items for the restaurant and brewery as well. In addition to that, a maximum of 159 energy-efficient cottages, tiny homes, if you will, proposed for the property. And according to the applicant, these cottages will be a for-sale product and will be available, though, for short-term rentals as part of the agritourism and other events that take place on the property as a whole. The dwellings that we're talking about, they do fall under the type of building code ANSI 119.5, which is a classification for park model recreational vehicles. Now, again, this process began late last year with the application submittal and the preliminary meetings. The general concept, everything was submitted to the Planning Commission back in December of last year. They recommended approval. It then came to you for consideration on December 13th. You did not take any action at the time. There was a good bit of discussion about the proposal, but you did request more information and more opportunity for study regarding the proposal. Since that time, we've had a work session with the City Council and the applicant, also staff. We've had several meetings between us and the applicant. And in August, some staff and a couple of council members made a site visit to a similar project that the applicant owns near Travelers Rest. And again, the property is 28 acres, and the request is for PDD, Planned Development District. And the reason for PDD is because there are multiple land uses, more unique concepts that we don't typically see under our current zoning, particularly with HI heavy industrial. So that's the request. And again, as you know, with a PDD, it requires a document that outlines specific development details for a piece of property, and some highlights that you can see in the PDD document and things we've talked about in the past, that about 50% of the site will remain as open space. The permitted uses per the PDD document is a restaurant and brewery, retail, farm, park model cottages. There will be efforts made to preserve as much vegetation as possible. And again, the cottages will be used for short-term rentals only. And throughout this process, the concept of a mixed-use agritourism development has been mostly well-received throughout the review period. But resulting from the site visit, some research, the discussions that we've had, there's several concerns that popped up with some development standards and the construction of the dwelling units that we've discussed in the past. And some of those are the dwelling units have a lack of permanence, are not on permanent foundations. Dwelling units are built to a code that relates to RV type trailers, and they're not built to the International Residential Code, like stick-built housing. Exterior materials of the dwellings, there's been discussion that they need to have more of a premium appearance. And the intent is for the units to be occupied on a temporary basis. There is concern that may be difficult to regulate, and some could be permanently occupied. And then when you look at this development, the 28 acres, some of the units could possibly be located in a floodplain. So those are some of the concerns that have been discussed. The staff recommends that if this is approved, several items need to be addressed and confirmed, that there needs to be assurance to ensure that the dwellings can meet IRC codes and are fixed to permanent foundations with permanent utility hookups, that their measures must be established to ensure that the units are occupied on a temporary basis only. And the entire development, we recommend that the street network in the development is built to public standards because of adequate police, fire, sanitation, those type of services are required. We want to ensure that the street network is built to a certain level of standard. Also, I mentioned that this is a mixed-use development. We want to make sure that the development is intended to be that, and the residential aspect of it must accompany other approved uses and not solely be a residential community. And as I mentioned before, there's a potential for some of these units to be located in a floodplain, that we recommended all park model dwellings in the floodplain would be required to meet manufactured home standards that's found in the floodplain ordinance. Now, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. The applicant is also here tonight. They may be able to add some more information as well.
Good. Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. the applicant is here, and we have the team here, so I'll open it up to questions, comments. Mr. Stewart?
I would say like the applicant first.
The applicants.
I was hoping y'all let us speak for a minute. I just wanted to, I met several of you down there in August in TR when we visited. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having us down here again. It's been a long road for my client. I haven't been involved but since about in August, but you know, he was here all the way 11 months ago. So we're, the good news of this is the staff's conditions are all acceptable to us. Those are all good to go. But there's not going to be any building in the floodplain. He can meet those standards. He can make permanent foundations. So all of those are fine. So I'm hoping that this will be ready to move forward because like I said, it's, you know, time kills developments and it's been a long time. It's a really quality product. It's innovative. It ends up falling between the zoning classifications. It falls between the code classifications, but it's innovative. And I think Anderson will be glad to have it. It's nice. The agritourism part is very progressive. I mean, like the retail, I just asked Justin who can address your questions, but you know, the agritourism is like selling flowers and honey and stuff that comes off the farm piece. The farm piece is what will be down in the floodplain. But anyway, like I said, the conditions are fine that your staff has developed. He can comply with all those, so we hope it'll receive a favorable vote tonight so we can move it ahead to the next reading and the next reading. But if you have any questions for Justin, he's here with me, so anything specific he can probably better address.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Questions to the developer?
I have one, Mayor.
Mr. Roberts?
Justin, is your organization a member of the Recreation Vehicle Industry Association?
We are not.
You are not.
Correct.
But you build these according to their somewhat standards and their specifications.
Yeah, so the actual code is ANSI 119.5. So the RVIA is in charge of that code, but there are multiple organizations that can verify that you built to that code.
So who is the oversight entity of your construction?
It's actually a place in Tennessee. I apologize, the name slips me, but we can, you know, address that as needed for sure with third-party verification of those things.
Okay, thank you.
So talk a little bit about the floodplain. The plans are to have a farm component?
Correct, yes. So we don't plan on doing any construction within the floodplain. So I know there's a concern about homes that could be in the floodplain, but we just aren't going to put any in the floodplain. So we're doing a farm-to-table brewery. So within the property, we'll do things like honey and grow flowers and small animals. No large animals, if you will. No horses or cows or pigs or anything like that. But some chickens, some gardening, vegetables, hops to use in the brewery, those kinds of things can all be grown in the floodplain.
And you're a partner with the brewery, the restaurant brewery part of it?
The Bowen House Brewery, and he attended last December during the meeting, but not here today, but yes.
I got a question, Mayor.
Mr. Martinez?
You know, I like the concept of the farm-to-table restaurant. I like that. I've got some questions, maybe a little bit of concern when it comes to the tiny home or the cottages. Can you speak to more of, does that have a VIN number, or how exactly does the financing work for a property like that when it's sold?
So financing on the cottages or financing on the land?
On the cottages. So, or you tell me, is it a purchase of the land, or how exactly, if somebody's buying what they're buying? I'm just saying, if they went to the bank, how would they request financing?
Yeah, so there are various ways to get a loan on it. It's usually considered along the lines of a mortgage. So there are lenders that lend with 5%, 20% down, those kinds of things. Because of our classification, you can also get like an RV loan, but those are going to be much shorter term. Like a mortgage would be like 20-plus years, an RV loan would be like 5 years.
So there's a way to get an appropriate value for a property like that?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yep, they do appraisals on them whenever you get financing, correct, yep.
Okay.
Ms. Stewart?
Couple of questions. Are these going to be individually platted lots with each person having an individual lot, or is it going to be more like a campground where everybody just comes up and pulls up there?
Yeah, good question. So it sounds like the city would prefer that we do permanent foundations. So it wouldn't be a situation where somebody could just pull up and leave, because we'd have to put them on a permanent foundation, but they would not be, there would be no subdivision of lots.
No individual subdivided lots or anything?
Correct.
I didn't have the privilege, well, I didn't have the privilege, I didn't go see the ones in Travelers Rest, but I saw some that are being built here in Anderson County, kind of similar out by Paul's, and kind of took, I guess that's kind of similar to what you're doing as well.
Similar, but I would say that we're a step or two above what I understand is currently happening in Anderson County.
Question. So if I buy one, I'm leasing or renting the area where it's staying, right?
Correct, yes.
What if I decide to move it?
You can either sell it where it sits, or you can move it.
I can take it away from the premises.
Yeah, you always have that option. In our history, we do nice development, so there's more value in keeping it there. So in Travelers Rest over the last 5 years, we haven't had any move off site, because they want, we build value in the location. So the value stays with where it's at. If you take it off, then you lose the quality of where it's at, which is hard to duplicate.
But there's nothing to stop me from taking it. It's mine.
Correct.
Because I own that unit.
Correct. We do it on a month-to-month lease.
Mr. Roberts?
You also mentioned you're not a member of the RVIA, but you're still considering these to be park model RVs, correct?
Correct, yes.
If I could read, this is something put out by the RVIA, but it says what a park model RV is. It says these units are designed and built to be used for recreational camping purposes only. They are not meant to be affixed to the property in any way. They do not improve the property values in any way. And they are neither designed nor intended by their manufacturers to be used as permanent residences. Do you agree to all that?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Even though they will be affixed to the property?
So there's ways to attach it that still meet within ANSI code. And I'd be happy to send that book. I believe I sent it to somebody here already, but I can pull out the information as far as what is allowed within ANSI.
Okay, I would like to address that later in some other comments, but it also goes further to say what a park model RV is not. Due to their design, small size, and use as recreation, vacation, and seasonal units, park model RVs are explicitly excluded from being considered or used as a manufactured home under the HUD code. The key distinction is that the manufactured homes are single-family dwellings, and they are designed to be used for permanent residency. Park model RVs are not intended for, nor should they be used for anything other than recreational, camping, or seasonal use. They are not permanent residences and should never be used as such. They are not required to meet the building codes or installation codes that stick-built or manufactured homes are required to meet. Is that correct?
So just because they aren't required to doesn't mean we can't. So we build to, our homes are built to IRC even though we don't have to. And there are inspection companies that we can get to review that. So you can always build above the standard, but you aren't required to. And so, and I think it was you that I maybe exchanged emails with when there was questions about IRC. IRC has come out and explicitly said that you can build to IRC code and put it on a frame and have it be designated as a park model RV. And then the earlier part of that, as far as a park model not being intended for permanent residence, I mean, that's exactly our point. Like, we're not intending to use these as permanent residents. It's along the lines of, if you ever been to like a nice KOA and they have a cottage, or a cabin, if you will, those are generally park model RVs. So they're used for weekend stays, week-long stays, those kinds of things are what they are intended for, correct?
That was for council's information purposes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything to ask toward Mr. McKenzie and his team? Any other questions for the developer? Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion among us, any comments, questions?
And I guess a couple of things with me, I have some reservations without these not being individually platted lots. That's a concern of mine. I know that they're saying you're gonna put them on a permanent foundation, but yet they can come and pick them and move them off. To me, it's just like a glorified trailer park in a way. And I just don't, don't have a lot of history. I'm seeing what a development is going to look like, 10, 15, 20 years down the road for something like this. And I just have a lot of reservations about this development at this time.
Any other comments?
I have a question.
Question?
So with regard to, Mr. McKenzie made his team made the suggestions, recommendations that mixed use agritourism development so it would accompany the residential aspect. I think first off, how do we even put that into this document and control it? Like, what's the farm to table, the brewery, whatever it is, doesn't work out, and we sit there with residential use. How do we control the fact that maybe the land can't be? I'm trying to put a little wrap around this one. How do we control the fact? I mean, what if they say, well, we're looking for a tenant, or how would we control that? The economy turns, whatever. I mean, I think it's a cool idea. Yeah. So that day one. But I think some reservation about how we're able to maintain control of that. And what if it doesn't? What's going to be our plan of action?
Thoughts?
Yeah, I think the developer has a mechanism for that, and then I have a follow-up comment to that, to another subject matter. You want to, I know you have.
There's some reference in there about him building it in 2 phases, but he's going to build it all at once. Now, and it's not like a CO for some of these, but I mean, anything the staff can come up with before it's signed off on, he's going to build the whole thing out.
I don't think that was the question.
Okay.
The question was specifically, how do you control who's living there, who's not living there, the short-term rentals, that kind of thing. And it's my understanding Justin has a way of doing that.
Oh, he does. That's baked into the leases. The leases are by short-term, right?
Can you describe that a little bit more?
Okay. Justin, you want to tell them how the leases are done?
So to your point, partly the reason that we do a land lease as opposed to giving up ownership in a lot is we lose control. So if we were to subdivide these lots and people started doing whatever they wanted with those, we wouldn't have authority to do much of anything. So what we've done is with the lease, we have more control over what is allowed to happen, and it's all on a month-to-month lease. So within that lease, and like in Travelers Rest, we had to turn in our lease as part of the approval process. It states clearly in there, these are not intended for primary residences. And we can come up with any number of triggers that council would see fit to include in there. But it's going to be a lot easier if you guys have a problem with it not following it as one landowner than individual lots. If you're in a mobile home park and you start Airbnb in your mobile home, but you have your own lot, there's not really as many mechanisms to take care of that.
Yeah, so that definitely answers part of my question. I think the other part was, what about the business side of it, the agritourism side? If it's not conforming to the planned development per our guidelines,
Yeah.
And I'm
I think I
looking
can answer that.
optimistically, or,
Well, it would be a zoning violation.
right. So
If it's not in accordance with the PDD as, it's written and approved.
So it's a risk he's going to take, or whoever's involved is going to take, that if a business fails and they're unable to, recruit another entity to perform or to operate under there, he's going to have a code violation?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that would be a code violation. Because, say the business came, business left kind of thing.
Right.
It's just written in the PDD document that a business is zoned within the PDD document that it can be there, right? So if he didn't have a business at all, it's just giving them the option of a business within it. So no,
Which answers my question we're back to a park system with primary residential, or at that point would be only residential. And I think that's part of my concern for, as innovative as it is, I do, and if he were, let's say he sells it off, sells the development off, the project off, whatever, how do we control that going forward? We end up with a development that is, may not meet the standards of what he's proposing today in 20 years or 5 years when the next person comes in. How do we protect ourselves?
It seems like that could be a condition.
Got a lot of thoughts going on in here.
It seems like
so
that could
I'm
be
trying
a
to get them out,
specific
but-
condition of,
Say that again?
it seems like instead of, like you said, like usually it is a mixed-use development has multiple uses, that this one could say it has the multiple uses have to be in use. It could be written into the PD exactly that way. And then if the business failed, he'd be looking for another one, he'd be out of compliance, he'd need to get back in, but we can address, we're certainly willing to accept that.
All right, I'm going to switch gears for just a moment, if I could. One observation that we have, and it's in the recommendations here, is that from the site near Travelers Rest, the road standards were not built to city road standards. And we have our city engineer here tonight that can describe that in great detail what a city road standard is, and that might be appropriate because you go out there now, which I've gone out there and looked from the road, it's very raw land we're talking about. And I know what you built off of, or my observation of near TR was you have some things going with you as far as, grade in place, less trees. The farmer before had done some things to the property already, and then you made improvements, and you're obviously going to continue to make investment improvements there. In this case, though, what the council is, the recommendation and what the council is saying, and along with what we do citywide, is it would immediately need to go from raw land to build a road built to city standards, which our city engineer can tell us was 24 feet, curb to curb. And we're talking about curb and gutter and stormwater, permanent stormwater infrastructure. And then you're talking about sewer lines, and sewer is close by. And then you're talking about water lines and fire hydrants. And so you're talking about a significant amount of infrastructure. Is there any way you can assure us, because that is different than what we saw in TR, is there any way you can assure the council to that you plan to build to this?
So, we do have, the main road that we're putting in on this development is over the existing sewer line. So sewer line is already in that road, in the existing quote-unquote gravel drive, I guess, at this point. Now, in Travelers Rest, what we did, and you'll have to excuse me, I don't know like all the particulars of your specific ordinance for a public road. When I talked to my engineer, he suggested that I see if we can do public pavement, but if not, we just have to look at what exactly those are. You know, and I do apologize, this is the first time I've had to go through this process. So like in Greenville County, you know, we needed the North Greenville Fire Department to sign off on our road to ensure that they had proper widths. You know, we had no road parking, for instance. I think there it was only a 20-foot minimum width on the road. And then, you know, I'm confident that we can meet it. My assumption would be that would all be part of that permitting process.
Okay. Well, with that, can I call our city engineer real quick just to come up and describe what our road standards and infrastructure standards are, so that you can hear me clearly.
So basically, and if there's a particular question, you can just stop me, but our road standards, because we are an urban area, we're not in the county, our main concern for our roads are that they are able to support our emergency vehicles. So that's 24 feet face of curb to face of curb. If you have curb, curb is not necessarily required. It's usually done that way, but it's not required. It would have to be a paved road built with proper base and pavement. Generally, we go with the DOT standard, so that's what you would get into with that. As far as this would not be a city road, it would have to be a private road, but because we'd be providing emergency services and potentially other services like sanitation, it would still have to conform. Any other questions about infrastructure?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Would you, have you, even doing all that, do you have an estimated cost of the infrastructure, cost of just the roads in the development?
On this project, I don't. I have a ballpark number that I come up with per lot of $10,000 to $15,000 per lot, which is a pretty big buffer, but it gives me enough space to make those adjustments, and I'm very confident that we can meet everything that you described.
Good, thank you. Ms. Stewart?
And I guess this is for water and sewer. Don't we have to have an individual lot tied to a water tap and a sewer tap? It just can't be in an open area. Isn't water taps and sewer taps tied to an individual platted lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding, you know, in this case as well, it's not going to be applied to the lot. And you're right, there is a code section to that references that you have to have a water meter to the platted lot and a sewer connection to the platted lot and so forth. And in this case, I guess what they're proposing is, you know, a water connection with a water meter and sewer connection to that main that they're referencing under the roadway, just for each unit. Now, I understand they're stacked. Some of the units, you know, there's a little, you can see on the map, and what we saw in TR, you know, you might have four. Well, you got several of them, kind of a little road here, and then they go around the roadway, kind of a little cul-de-sac, and each of them little branches off of the roadway. And so, and I guess that's curious too, if I could expand on your TR situation. Can you expand on that? Are you on city water there, or municipal water, so to speak? And
Yep.
how do you meter those?
Yeah, good question. So it's a single landowner, so we do master meters for everything because we're ultimately responsible for making sure all of those get paid. It's not, you know, we're not subdivided, so we don't have a whole bunch of individual bills and invoices. We are on sewer, Metropolitan Sewer with REWA handles our sewer in Travelers Rest, and then Greenville Water handles our water. So we basically work with them on, we'd work with them on how many meters they think we need. On this development, I imagine we'll put in 2 or 3 master meters for the water. We'll probably need, you know, a half dozen or so transformers, and then put master meters and run all the electrical to the individual units. Because again, our intent is to keep this more centralized, so we don't have, again, keeping the control, we can keep it looking nice and keep control of making sure all the bills are paid and all that kind of stuff. So that's an important aspect of, in my opinion, of keeping this a nice development. So all the sewer bill is billed through the water all to one owner.
Thank you. That's similar to what we do, of course, to our multifamily and apartment complexes is that scenario. So back to your question, Mr. Stewart, I guess it falls in, this is unique and different, so it doesn't fall in just our traditional code section with that. So kind of a different space there. Part of the infrastructure requirement too, because you have to supply fire hydrants, which is a minimum of 6-inch main down the roadway as well. So, I mean, I'm not sure what the infrastructure is yet in TR, but it would be a 6-inch main that would be required to be down this roadway for fire protection services to meet the flow characteristics of a hydrant.
Mr. Roberts, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Thompson.
Dr. Thompson.
I'm just listening, and I know this is an agricultural community, I assume, this area. It's in your, so this is an agricultural type area, and it's hard to assess this, but with such a unique project as this, look at roads and everything else, would this be an asset to development in that community? Or do you think it might be an asset to development in this community? Jeff, I guess if you think about that, since it's in your area, such a development as this, you could look at it as being an asset or not an asset. It's hard to predict that, but just thinking about it, would that be something that needed to be added or subtracted or thought about, that would have a unique development such as this in this agricultural area, which would be an asset to the community, or maybe not?
You're asking
I guess I'm...
Jeff's opinion on that?
Well,
Or our opinion?
everybody's opinion.
John, did you have a thought?
I get back to, since Mr. McEwen brought up fire safety, I see the chief's here, I know he's here for another agenda item, but, you know, looking at the layout, and I think we had one recently with one of our, another developer within the city. I know we discussed cul-de-sac turnaround for
The AU?
fire trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, with AU, and of course they had to amend their plat and where that would happen. So I don't know how this layout is, I don't know how it affects it, but I don't see them on there. Because the life safety obviously becomes another key, and property protection, but.
Can someone talk to that?
Yeah, so.
Just
The radiuses that would be required,
Yeah, so just
Well,
like.
I know, I'm
just like
just saying, I
the
don't see it in
situation.
here, so
Yeah, okay.
we would require that before
Yes.
anything would go forward as well.
Right.
So, and I don't think
Right.
the number of houses then is reduced, and I say it's reduced, you may can move them or lay out differently, but we've got to treat it like it's a regular development. Even though it's unique and special, we have to treat it the same standards, so.
Good. Mr. Roberts? Jeff?
This is a difficult one. I won't say it any other way. It's difficult. And the only way I know to weigh this out is to list out the pros and the cons and then just see where it weighs. There's not a clear answer. I'm going to give you some pros. I have no problem with tiny homes. I think it's probably a thing that we're going to see more and more of going forward. I like the concept of a retreat venue. Very nice. And I certainly approve of new and innovative construction methods. Being an engineer and a builder myself, always looking for better ways. Okay? Now, here's some cons, and some of this is gray, and the whole thing is gray, in my opinion. It's not a clear-cut answer, but first, there's no regulatory oversight from LLR. There's no building standard. If you have any sort of redress with the construction of that RV, who do you go to? It's built, you say it can be built to IRC. I have some further questions about that. They're meant to be temporary in nature. They're not permanent, or not meant to be permanently affixed, so it lacks permanency. Safety should always be our priority concern. Wind and fire are the two that primarily come to mind. Speaking of wind, I've never seen a conventionally built structure, house, blown off of its foundation. It's just due to its mass, due to its anchorage into the ground. Rebar, anchor bolts, that sort of thing. But I have seen plenty of mobile homes and RVs blown over, or blown apart, for that matter, just blown apart. A big question in my mind is, and Mr. Roberts, John Roberts, asked all around this, I'm not sure you got the right answer, or the answer you're looking for, but what happens if the brewery and agritourism component of this doesn't work out? What are we going to be left with? What will it look like in 10 to 20 years or in the future? These rezoning issues are some of the most contentious things that are brought before us, and we don't take it lightly. We'll debate this just to the end, but sometimes these are difficult, and this one certainly is. And you're asking for something that's permanent. You're asking for a rezoning that's permanent, for something that could be temporary in nature. I've heard from several of my constituents who are not in favor of it. I'm not sure it's the best use of the property either. And I can really boil it down to two questions, and this is really what I'm posing back to council. Do we want a campground in the city or an RV park? And ultimately, the ultimate test is, will it pass the test of time? And I have to say I have doubts about that. So with that, I'm motioning that we deny this request.
First by Mr. Jeff Roberts, second by Tony Stewart, and we'll open it up for further discussion. I would just say that I'm not going to say anything different than you guys have said. I had the opportunity to visit the site in Travelers Rest. I think Mr. Roberts boiled it down, some of my concerns too. And there's no clear picture. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, and so we have to make the best decision that we have right now. So we have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion?
I'll just make a quick comment. I think the reason maybe some of us are wrestling with this has to do with just the flexibility of the developer. I appreciate the willingness to continue to talk about this and to conform to some of the concerns that we've had. But it's been something that's been wrestling in my mind as I continue to hear about this.
Any comments?
I think that's the case with everybody. I think, one thing that, aside from my earlier questions, which really were statements that I danced around, Mr. Roberts, you're correct. What happens? How do we control it? Should business fail? What does it look like when the economy turns? Should you decide to sell it? I think you intend to do everything you say you're going to do. I have no reason to doubt it. You're willing to work with us and talk to us and answer our questions in a professional manner. But, what if? I've seen a lot of what ifs, and we have to consider what if. And I think, what if the development were to turn over hands? We're left, as you said, with a rezoning parcel that's non-conforming possibly per the PDD guidelines, and how do we control that, and how do we help it, how would we help them succeed? And then the second step would be, we still don't know, it sounds like these road costs, and then now the anticipated roundabouts, or turnarounds, I should say, areas that are going to be required, that changes the numbers, or possibly grading and infrastructure. I don't know, it's still a lot of openness, and that's scary, like Mr. Martino said, because I think we all want to see something like that. I think it's unique.
Mr. Mayor,
But it's scary.
could I say something about
Yes, sir.
the rezoning? I 100% agree with, like, if someone comes in and says, can we rezone this C2? You're open to every use for C2, but this is a PD. It can only be this. It can't be anything else.
Agreed, unless the business fails. One of the two businesses fail.
It would be
Right, either the agriculture side or the park model side. And that's something that could be, we have to be speculative on everything we look at and hope we make the right decision. I don't want to regret making a wrong decision. But what if the economy causes one or the other or both to fail? And then we're left with a partial development of just homes or just whatever else is in there, And then it's got to remain per the way you're running, it's got to be agribusiness. That's scary.
I was trying to address that earlier about, like, that could be a condition that it has to be two, and then if it's not, it's non-conforming. It's a straight enforcement issue. It's a non-conforming use. If the business fails and he doesn't replace it, if he can't amend the PD, because you say, no, it's got to have a business in there, then it's a non-conforming use. Nobody can live there. The leases are gone. Boom, it's out of business. Somebody else has to come back in here and try to rezone it.
Is that how it would be handled, Frankie, Mr. McLean? Is that?
It could be.
Any other questions?
I mean, obviously, I'll let you guys are going to decide what you want to decide. I do want to make a note that it is heavy industrial. So what can go there would be some heavy industrial stuff. It could just be a storage facility with a bunch of storage. If the storage company goes out of business, what do those storage units become? I mean, I think it's a fair question that would need to be applied to any business equally. But I don't think it applies any differently to us than it would be any other individual business, because it is one business. Now, if somebody were to go in there and subdivide lots, that isn't one business that you have to deal with. That's a bunch of individuals that you have to address individually, and to me, that would be the nightmare, versus it's one business. If an RV park goes out of business, that RV park can only be an RV park, or it has to be rezoned. And I think that's the protection here, is by doing it this way, you guys can come back and have the authority to say, oh, it's not operating that way anymore. It's yanked, and somebody's going to have to rezone it to something else.
While you're up and make a comment, with regard to any type of architectural control, that seems to be one of our primary focuses lately, is making sure standards are, we're building our standards. Is there anything in the document in the full form that relates to that? Or would, it can't be below this grade, or it's going to have this, grade's not the right word. It's got to have this appearance, or it has to be this siding, this level.
So that was a question brought up by planning, and we're willing to put all of that in there. I mean, we charge $350 to $400 a square foot. I mean, this isn't a mobile home park, no matter how bad people might want it to be or might think that it is. We put a solar roof on every cottage, like an integrated solar roof, like a Tesla solar roof on every cottage. This is not a mobile home park. We can dictate, my understanding, the point of this is to be able to dictate those things as far as quality. I know there's concerns about the steel siding versus the lap siding, and my intent is to do board and batten, because I think it's a more premium and it still fits with the agritourism aspect. So it's premium, but it still fits with the development as a whole. So we can absolutely put that in there, that we're going to require these things. And again, as a single property owner, We can ensure maintenance is kept up, right? We don't have to worry about this one doesn't cut their grass, or this one doesn't do this. And I think through the PD, we can ensure that it's going to be this, or if it's going to be heavy industrial, it's going to be heavy industrial. I mean, the main entrance is a used car lot, and it hugs the railroad track, and on the other side of the railroad track is a rundown, rusted, abandoned building. Like, so you're worried about me being like my neighbor, you know? We're not going to be that. And the beauty is, like, if we do, you move them all off and you got vacant dirt, and it can be rezoned to something else pretty darn easily.
Any further discussion? Motion on the floor. We had a first and a second to deny this agenda item on its first reading. I'll call the questions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. One opposed? So it passes 7-1 to deny it on the first reading. John Roberts. We'll move on to our first item of new business, and that's request consideration of a resolution approving a mutual aid agreement between the City of Anderson Police Department and the Pickens County Sheriff's Department. Mr. McEwen.
Chief Stewart is here to go over this item, this request for you. These are standard boilerplate mutual aid agreements that we have. We have numerous law enforcement agencies, including Anderson County, our neighboring municipal jurisdictions, Clemson University, many others. And so this adds to our resources available to us and available to the neighboring jurisdiction. Mr. Stewart.
Thank you. I would just echo the city manager. This is our standard agreement that we make with our law enforcement partners. We've had a long-standing agreement with Pickens County Sheriff's Office, in particularly because our detention center here, should something happen where our detention center is inoperable, Anderson County is our backup, but then Pickens County is our second backup. There's no language different from any other mutual aid that we've signed with Pickens County.
Any questions of the chief? It's pretty standard.
We've done these before.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a first by Mr. Newton.
Second.
Second by Dr. Thompson. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Our last item of new business is request consideration of a contract for Fire Station 3 roof replacement. Ms. McEwen?
Okay, during the spring in our budget process, this was a capital need that's been within our capital need list and was ultimately funded by City Council in this year's budget. With that, we're moving to implement having Fire Station 3's roof replaced. Chief Charlie King is here to go over the background of it, and we also have a building specialist that's managing the project for us here as well. And we would like him to have the opportunity to describe in a little more detail what kind of roof system we're putting on there. So first we'll start off with Chief King.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, but I'm simply standing in the way of smarter people to talk specifics of their job. But certainly thanks for the opportunity for funding the project. Huge need for the firefighters that live and work out of that station every day that have continued to experience multiple leaks throughout the building. But we went into this project with the help of city engineer, Ms. Lucretia. We solicited the help and brought on DP3, and that brought Daniel Atwell with WMBE. That'll provide a little bit more specifics on the specs of the project and what's going. But project was put together, they designed the specs to not only evaluate that roof, but to recommend the roof that was needed to replace it and ensure that we didn't have any future leaks for any immediate future in time to come. But part of that included inviting and mandating that anybody that intended to bid on the project attend a pre-construction meeting there at the station. It gave us and the architect firms the opportunity to meet those and ensure that we were receiving quality bidders into that they were able to see the station, get up on the roof, and see the facility and the work that was ahead to make sure that it matched their capabilities. 8 of those vendors attended, and certainly as they were able to see the specs and bids were sent out through SCEBA, the independent mail, websites and others, that we received a total of 4 bids that came back on it, and we're recommending Piper Construction to be paid out of the fire department budget for that $264,033. But certainly would like to introduce Mr. Daniel Atwell with WMB that played a pretty significant role in the design of those specs in the process.
And as he's walking up here, so this is, we use DP3 Architects to do the re-roof and the envelope of this building and the NBC simultaneously. You remember that project? It went really well. And Daniel's group worked under the direction, or worked under the umbrella of DP3. This is the same setup here. We were very, very pleased with the design team and the project of this building and the other building. With that, Daniel, if you can introduce yourself and describe the roof, I appreciate that.
So I'm Daniel Atwell. I'm with WM Building Envelope Consultants. I've been with WM 5 years now. Before that, I was with ADC Engineering before I partnered up with this company. As David mentioned, we did the full design in conjunction with DP3 for this building and also municipal building across the parking lot. Specific to the fire station, so what's there is it's basically a pre-engineered metal building. It's got a pretty facade around it, brick, stucco, etc. And then the roof system is a pre-engineered metal panel on top of the purlins.
Metal, I didn't hear that. Metal what on top?
A metal panel. So it's basically a standing seam metal panel. It's actually a trapezoidal, excuse me. But the metal panel sits on purlins that are 5 feet on center. In between the purlins is the existing insulation that is 3 inches thick. So when we got the call to come out there and look at it, I threw a ladder up, got on the roof, we measured it, and basically the metal panel itself is in good condition. So the feel of the roof is in good condition, but around the penetrations and terminations is where the issue is. So you have 2 parts of this building. I labeled it roof area B and A. So the roof area A would be where the fire trucks are, which would be the upper roof. Roof area B would be where your sleeping quarters and offices are. So the metal panels themselves, they terminate into a vertical metal panel and then also into brick veneer. So the roof system that we're going back with, just based on the leaks and based on the construction, we can't replace the roof panels without disturbing the whole building. So basically what we're doing is we would flute fill the standing seam, which is 16-inch panels, flute fill it with insulation, put an additional 2-inch polyiso-cyanurate, then a cover board, and then a mechanically fastened PVC roof membrane. So as far as we mentioned wind and fire a minute ago, the cover board enhances the wind. The insulation on top is also going to enhance your energy bill because there's also insulation below it, but we're going to enhance that. As far as the wind, I mentioned mechanically fasten it. So we will not mechanically fasten to the panel itself for wind uplift. All of it will be to the purlins. So with the 2018 code change, I ran the calculations, enhanced fastening at the perimeter, corners, field prime, and in the field. So all that will, again, go to each purlin so that the wind load is divided out equally. But specific to the roof system and what's been designed, the reason it's designed this way is because there's not a way not to disturb the building without putting a recovery roof on top of the panel. So basically we're turning the metal panel into a metal deck, increasing the insulation, increasing the fire rating with the cover board, and then a PVC mechanically fastened system. So that's the roof system itself. The walls, they're metal panels also. They will be wrapped. So what I'm doing it's the same panel that's on the roof that's on the walls, just turned vertically. I'll furrow out the panels with a piece of Z-closure. I'll insulate those as well. I'll put a cover board on top of that or sheathing. Then the membrane will be fully adhered up to that. The coping around the front of the building and the 2 sides, that'll all be replaced. The membrane will wrap over the parapet wall, enclosing the building envelope like we did here before the new coping's put on. And it all drains to the gutter at the rear staff parking lot area I'll refer to. So he mentioned the price of $264. So what I did with this, the base bid was the roof recovery system. Alternate one was the sealant joint. So I do roofing and building envelope, so I also walk the whole perimeter. The glazing of the storefront windows look good. The control joints in between the brick veneer are showing signs of cohesive and adhesive failure, so I threw an alternate in there. If it came in budget, go ahead and do this while we have a contractor on site. So all the sealant joints throughout the perimeter of the building, sealant joints meaning the control joints in the wall, not the glass, will be replaced in addition to the roof. So then your full building envelope of the Fire Station 3 will be sealed off besides wet glazing of any storefronts, which would come at a later date. In addition to that, unit prices and a contingency of $10,000 is built into my specs. So the contractor had to include that in that price. So if we run into any unforeseen conditions, if something was missed during the design process, we have a contingency. If it's not used, that $10,000 on the allowance comes directly back to the county. So that's kind of standard in the design process. I did something similar on these buildings, but that's kind of the mix of what's there, what we're going back with, and kind of what's in the design.
And also including your packet, and Daniel, if you would stay up there for just a
Yes,
moment.
sir.
And I appreciate the detailed description, much more detail than I could have provided. Including your packets is a letter of recommendation of DP3 Architects regarding the low bidder here. In this case, we did have really good bidders, and you can see the prices came within a fair range. Can you speak to the contractor?
Yes, sir. So the contractors that actually bid this job, I deal with them on various projects throughout. I work with Anderson School District 1, 3, Clemson, Tri-County, and all the way into Pickens and the surrounding areas. All four of the ones that we bid are familiar with the spec. I've been working with them since I was with ADC, and I'm going to probably continue working with them for a while. I got a long time left. So, but the contractors themselves, they do a good job. They just did Crescent High School down the road, so I'm sure some of y'all may have passed that because that's right down the road. And they do Tri-County work for me and Clemson, so they're actually on Lander University right now for me. So,
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, Chief King, I understand what you meant by you were going to get out of the way and let somebody else speak. That was pretty excellent, so thank you for the detail. He's hired.
And I couldn't quite describe that to Jeff, so I decided to bring it back up.
I do have one question. This roof's 19 years old.
yes, sir.
Standing seam metal roof. Is it typical to have the problems it's having now?
So with a pre-engineered building, what you have with metal is the expansion and contraction. So
Okay.
I mentioned a second, the field of the panel, meaning the 16-inch wide panel, they're okay. But the terminations at the wall, and then I mentioned roof area A and B where it steps up higher, no expansion joint was put in there. So I'm also putting an expansion joint into that system. The biggest thing with these buildings is they leak due to expansion and contraction. So the panel itself is okay, the rest is not. So expansion and contraction over 19 years, yes sir, is typical.
We need to review our envelope plans before we do anything.
Maybe
Anything.
my question maybe to David would be, is there any liabilities, warranties
Yes,
out there? I mean,
including this project.
well, the original project.
Oh, no, we actually look at we evaluate some legal avenues on that, because it's had some issues for quite some time and kind of ran into a dead end on that, due to some state statutes and due to the company that
Gotcha.
originally built it, so.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Roberts.
You mentioned just then that you've had an issue with it for quite some time. It was built in 2003. When did you start seeing a problem with it?
I can't speak before I was here, but since I've been here, second, third year, I guess 16, 17, we were doing a good bit of work to it, patching, and in the last couple of years, we've had a contractor on the roof every year, trying to do some type of work to it to patch it, to stop leaking, which has worked for a little bit, but then ultimately, as part of the entire review of the building, I tasked them to review this has been our process going forward, the roof and the envelope at the same time, the building system together. It became really clear that the continued patching of that metal roof panel wasn't going to work, that we're going to have to come up with a new system. And so this is a more permanent
roof system. Well, I don't want to say that, it's a 20-year lifespan, as you can see here, as a period of 20-year, and then 3 years of craftsmanship warranty on the, putting it on, but the warranty on the roof is 20 years.
Okay, so you're talking 20 years before we leak?
So the manufacturer warranty is 20 years, and what it covers is the material and the, I'll say the labor portion. So in the fine print of any manufacturer's warranty, they have clauses. So what I do is the 3-year contractor warranty that's written, we write in-house. So anything that does leak within that period, or if there is a deficiency in the roof system, typically I come back the first year, the second year, and the third year to do an inspection, have the contractor come back out there. And the reason it's written for 3 years versus your standard 1 year is what we found with the envelope systems. After 3 years, all your movement, all your parts and everything is taking place. So the manufacturer's warranty is going to cover you up to their fine print that's hard to read.
I understand.
And then the contractor warranty, I write in-house to protect the owner.
Any other questions?
I have one other.
Go ahead.
Years ago, we had a flat roof on Lakeside Millsboro. And we put time and time and time and time and effort and effort and effort and effort. Dang things never would quit leaking. Is there any option of putting something other than a flat roof on this thing?
So it's not flat. It does have positive slope to the rear, or negative
Does
slope
it have
to
a
the rear.
positive slope?
Yes, sir. So the slope on is a 1/2 inch on 12 to the gutter, and it is positive slope. So, the definition of flat, kind of comes back from coal tar days when it was a 1/4 inch or actually dead level when they used type 1. But regarding the options that you're mentioning, the evaluation of the building from a structural standpoint would have to take place. Any units that are on the building, they rely on that air intake. That would have to be accommodated by a mechanical engineer. And then any roofing system that's attached to any new structure would have to be designed with the structural engineer. So can it be done what you're asking? Possibly, but the price of it.
It would be extraordinary.
Yes, it's just not possible. And I get that question all the time. Can we make it a steep slope roof? The answer is yes, if the building could handle the load, but then you have to handle the mechanical systems that need air, every other aspect of your plumbing vents, and every roof that I've ever seen that's had that attempted, I've had to come back and take it off.
But Daniel, you agree too that this is not
It's not
the old-fashioned flat roof?
No, this is not an old-fashioned.
What is the slope on it?
Sir?
What is the slope?
1/2 on 12, so a 1/2 inch per foot. And code is.
Other than flat.
Ms. Martinez?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, this fire station's in my district, in District 2, and, I would like to see us do this for a couple reasons. One, we got first responders under this roof. We're continuing to grow in District 2, which these first responders are going to be serving. Not to mention, we've got some pretty expensive vehicles and machinery under this that's getting wet. So I'm certainly in favor of us finding a more permanent solution than just trying to fix a problem.
Anything else?
You're making a motion?
Oh, I would like to make a motion that we approve this and award the job to J. Piper Roofing Company in the amount of $264,033.
And I second it.
Thank you.
Well, first,
I'm the newest one, sorry.
first by Mr. Martinez, a second by Mr. Walker. Any further discussion? Mr. Stewart?
Mr. Martinez, does your motion of $264,033, does that also include the alternate one of $18,273 for the windows as well?
It does.
All right.
Yes, sir.
First and second, any further discussion? What's the timeline?
The timeline of the project?
Yes, sir.
So right now, the notice of intent's been issued. Once this is approved, then I will write the contract, get it over to them, and then we'll issue a notice to proceed based on when they can get material. There's been material shortage, which I'm sure people are aware of. So the timeline for the project's 45 days, and that includes the alternate.
Thank you.
But that's from the moment of the notice to proceed.
Including, so carry out the holidays coming up as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Yes, sir. So it would start next year sometime, but once that clock starts, when they tell us the material's been secured, I'll issue it, and the clock will be 45 days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
That ends our new business. Also in the packet, I've also noticed the Finance Department has provided us with a couple of documents, so very good, especially when you see all green indicators, so that's always good. I don't see that a whole lot in other organizations that I'm dealing with. So I would ask everybody to look those over at your leisure. We have an executive session, section 30-470A2, which is discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contract agreement and extension of services to attract economic development and the receipt of legal advice relating to matters covered by the attorney-client privilege. And so I would entertain a motion to go in executive session. Well, first by Mr. Stewart, the second by Mr. Martinez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We stand in executive session. Do we need to, I think we need to,
I'm sorry.
Now you can do it.
now, I'd entertain a motion to come out of executive session. First by John Roberts, second by Jeff Roberts. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? In executive session, we heard discussions in regards to a contractual agreement to attract economic development and receive legal advice from our attorney and management team. No actions taken. Have a motion to adjourn. So moved. Have a first by Mr. Newton.
Second.
Second by Mr. Martinez. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.